All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. The regularly scheduled meeting of Montezuma County Planning and Zoning Commission is being held in the Commissioners' Meeting Room in Montezuma County Administrative Offices, 109 West Main, Room 270, Cortez, Colorado. We're going to open with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Don, can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Farian?
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Here.
Commissioner Saunders?
Here.
Commissioner Lynch?
Here.
Commissioner Neergaard?
Here.
Also present is Don Haley of the County Planning Department. Absent is Commissioner Eddie Mack-Taylor. Please silence or turn off your cell phones during the meeting. Important calls can be taken out. If you'll step outside, please. Planning and Zoning Commission will review the February meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Hernandez,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Saunders. And can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Farian?
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Aye.
Commissioner Saunders?
Aye.
Commissioner Lynch?
Aye.
Commissioner Neergaard?
Aye.
Any further discussion on the motion? Motion was carried, vote was unanimous. Okay. The Montezuma County Planning Commission welcomes you to this meeting. The board is comprised of members who are tasked to make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. We are not the decision makers. We encourage public comment after each permit. Persons speaking during public comment will be limited to 3 minutes, or depending on the number of people wishing to speak, it may be reduced at the discretion of the Planning Commission to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address their thoughts and concerns. When addressing the commission, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record prior to providing your comments. Comments to individual applicants are not permitted. Participants may not yield their time to others. I will be voting tonight. And can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Farian?
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Here.
Commissioner Saunders?
Here.
Commissioner Lynch?
Here.
Commissioner Neergaard?
Here.
Okay, number one, notice is hereby given that the Montezuma County Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing and determining recommendations to be made to the Board of County Commissioners regarding a proposed subdivision amendment application to the Boren Single Lot Development submitted by Joshua and Gina Boren on property located at 15865 Highway 145, Dolores, Colorado, consisting of 5.02 acres, more or less, situated in Section 30, Township 37 North, Range 15 West, New Mexico Prime Meridian. This is a public hearing. Was the public notice published?
Yes.
Was evidence of letters to the adjoining neighbors and mineral owners submitted?
Yes.
And was the sign posted?
Yes, it was.
Okay. If the applicants want to come forward. And you'll have to turn on those mics. Perfect, thank you. Don, can we have planning department findings, please?
Sure. The applicants are requesting to amend their Boren Single Lot Development, their 5-acre parcel that exists on the northeast corner there of the shown property. The area is basically ag with a few commercial operations along the highway corridor. All agencies were notified. Access is with a CDOT access permit, which is currently in place. Applicants had been advised to check with CDOT if that needs to be amended or not. With storage units, there's a different calculation of traffic on how CDOT looks at that. It's not like one car for every storage unit every day, so that access permit's in place. That business does not require water, electricity, or septic, so that's no issue there. Wildfire Adapted has looked at the area there to the west of the single lot development as a potential moderate fire hazard. And the Borens have been talking with Samantha Torres from Wildfire Adapted as far as any mitigation efforts there. Weed control, they recommend a waiver. As far as any weed situations there on that property, it's not much growing there. Just around the fence perimeter. And not in the floodplain, that's basically it.
Sounds good. You guys have anything else to add?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so what they're looking to do is expand the development in this shaded area there to the west.
Expand the development further than the buildings we saw last month.
Yeah, nothing's actually changed, not even the fence lines. It's just, we have to move the boundary over a little bit.
Sure.
To be in compliance. And we're moving it onto our own property.
Right.
Or onto
Yeah.
our.
Right. I remember that, but there's no
25
addition.
yards or something. So,
Okay. There's no additional buildings planned at this point. Okay.
Right.
Sounds good. Any planning commission discussion?
No.
Okay. Yep. All right, then we will open it to public comment. If you'd like to comment, please come to the podium. Okay. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. And we can, okay. And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve a proposed subdivision amendment application to the Boren Single Lot Development submitted by Joshua and Gina Boren based on the following. The proposed use is in conformity with the code. The proposed use shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on other property in the area, and public utilities and services are available or can be made available to support uses consistent with the proposed zoning. And I have no conditions.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Okay. Don, can we have a vote?
Commissioner Farian,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Saunders,
Aye.
Commissioner Lynch,
Aye.
Commissioner Neergard.
Aye.
Okay, vote was carried, or motion was carried, vote was unanimous. Good luck, guys.
Thank you.
So, Don, can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Farian,
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Here.
Commissioner Saunders,
Here.
Commissioner Lynch,
Here.
Commissioner Neergard.
Here.
All right. Notice is hereby given that the Montezuma County Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing and determining recommendations to be made to the Board of County Commissioners regarding a proposed high-impact / special use permit application and commercial planned unit development amendment and COMZ rezoning application submitted by Daren and Kathy Stone for the existing Westview RV Park on property located at 12092 Highway 145, Dolores, Colorado, consisting of 25.44 acres, more or less, located north of Road M, east of Highway 145, situated in Section 7, Township 36 North, Range 15 West, New Mexico, Prime Meridian. This is a public hearing. Was the public notice published?
Yes.
Was evidence of letters to the adjoining neighbors and mineral owners submitted?
Yes.
And was the sign posted?
Yes.
Okay, the applicants want to come forward? All right. Don, can we have planning department findings, please?
Sure. So the Stones are amending their, the PUD for their RV park. What was previously approved had 3 years of vested rights. They have not completed the full build-out, so they are amending that PUD. Along with that, there was a high-impact special use permit application completed in 2015. It was never presented, discussed, or reviewed during the course of the PUD and the previous public hearings. So that is being reviewed at this time for the high-impact special use of the park. They're looking at, the previous plat had the cabins down here. As you can see, the cabins are here in the northwest corner. They're proposing 2 more cabins up there. Possible, what are they called, park model cabins there on the south.
Not sure, maybe just cabins.
And a few RV spots here. They had some other RV sites through here, but there's easements through there, water line and whatnot, so they're avoiding those, so they've kind of reconfigured a little bit of the full build-out. So they're amending their PUD and also doing a high-impact special use permit, and it was left zoned as ARES because it is part of a subdivision, or was. So we're having it zoned commercial.
So we're rezoning commercial. We are re-upping their 3-year rights.
Correct.
And then adding the high impact permit.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as basically everything's on site. Water, septic, power. All the sites are basically in, lacking a couple of the cabins, and if they provide the utility services there for the park models. Let's see, there's no fire mitigation required. Let's see, about a weed plan, I recommend a waiver for a weed plan. And, not in a floodplain. There's been no issues. They have the CDOT access permit there that is, combined with, Builder's First Source.
All right. Kathy, you got anything else to add?
Not really. I mean, we didn't not do the high impact before. It just didn't get put in the minutes or something. We did everything we were supposed to do, correct? I mean,
The high-impact special use application was never presented to either commission, so it wasn't ever discussed, reviewed, or approved.
Okay.
So it doesn't exist.
No,
That's what we're doing today.
correct.
Okay.
And the planning department is picking up the cost on that because it was the planning department's fault for not presenting it at the same time as the
That makes-
PUD.
Gotcha.
It's good enough gesture.
It was, it's basically the same conversation that was had for the approval, but, because it wasn't addressed, reviewed, or approved, then we need to, take care of that now.
And the purpose of the rezoning?
Because it's a commercial property.
Okay. It should have been commercial to
Done back
begin
then,
with
right.
as well. Okay.
Yeah, it's still zoned ARES, which is
Right.
residential in an existing subdivision.
Okay, So-
And we just did that because that's what was recommended to us then.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
we didn't know, so, yeah.
there's lots of residents renting.
Right. So really, the only thing is the re-upping of the special use permit to gain the right so you can continue to build in that
Correct.
section. That's really the only new
We
thing.
were always permitted for 119 spaces,
Mhm.
whether that be so many cabins and so many RV spaces, and we're at 103 right now total. So we just still want that option to do more if we choose to.
So is the plan to stay at the 119, not go over that? Okay,
That's, I mean, now, that's our plan.
yeah, sure. Okay.
And then what is the time limit? Is that what we've talked about before, that they have to do it within a certain amount of time or they lose that right?
It's vested rights begin the day that it's approved by the county commissioners.
And it lasts?
3 years,
3 years?
3 years.
So it's not built out right now. What we have in front of us, the potential spots, is what you're seeking
Correct.
for addition, okay? And this is high impact
As well as the high impact.
as well. So commercial, we're gonna change the zoning and make it high impact, okay?
Which those two things should have been done the first go
Before,
around.
okay, I understand that. Well, my problem with the high impact is that it's a major development. And I'm gonna go back to the lumberyard, you know, that, what they wanted to do, and we're piecemealing projects. And we told them, no, we wanna see your ultimate build out on a drawing. Don't piecemeal, don't come in with a little, living quarters was one of them, and then they were gonna extend the boundary, and then they were going to, put a vat system in there to soak the logs. Instead, we wanted to see it all in one drawing. So, and I think that's the way to go with high impact, I really do. Show me your ultimate build out, and not on the napkin, but I mean, I wanna see it on a drawing. That's just the way I feel, that it should be done more professionally.
And I think that's something to be considered when considering brand-new PUDs, right? Something that's been established for the length of time that it's been there, and we've already set the precedent of vested rights for 3 years, allowing them to go up to 119 spots, not necessarily specifying exactly where they can be on the property, as long as they're within the land use code regulatory body. You know, brand new ones, when we're talking about that, the detailed version, in my opinion, yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, but something that's already established and is currently operational,
Correct.
that they've already granted the ability to go up to 119 at some point, they didn't meet their 119 spot limit within their first 3 years, so they're just asking for an extension of those 3 years.
Right, but we are gonna grant a high impact permit,
Right.
and we are gonna change the zoning. So, to me, maybe it's not starting all over again, but it's certainly pushing that limit.
Understood, but the high impact and the commercial reapplication, or the commercial rezoning, we wouldn't even be having that conversation had it been done right the first time.
Granted. Okay, that's just my 2 cents.
At least that's how I see it.
I
I
mean,
would
we
agree
did
with that.
everything we were told to do.
Right.
Right.
I don't know what happened. I just found out from Dawn 3 weeks ago it happened.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And you have an easement from the lumberyard, right, for access?
there has always been an easement there. That property used to be one piece, them and us.
Oh, okay.
And the Hoffmans
Well.
owned it. And when they split it into 2 pieces, that was always the easement for both pieces.
It's a written easement, a written
Oh,
document,
yeah.
recorded document, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's all I have.
Kathy, the only concern that I see potentially down the road, and John brought this up earlier as well, there's a lot of people in one tight area with one access of exit and, you know, ingress, egress, right?
But we do have an emergency
You do,
exit,
You
yes.
do,
On up the highway, you see a red gate.
yes,
That's an emergency exit.
Okay.
The fire department approved it. They
Perfect.
have a padlock on it.
perfect.
And CDOT gave us our access with 119 spaces. Everything was based on that.
Sure.
okay, great.
The only reason I brought that up is the emergency exit,
Mhm, yeah,
which
we
is
have it.
great that you have that, so that was my only
I would be
concern.
proud of that, and I would certainly show that on maps, that
You know,
this
I
isn't exist, yeah,
Think about it,
Yeah.
but it is there.
yeah,
And it was discussed in the beginning.
Yeah, okay,
yeah, I'm with Zach, that's also really important, because first of all, I drove through your complex earlier this week, you are commended, that is a beautiful,
Thank you.
beautiful operation.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, what happens if
Yeah,
there was a fire at the beginning?
yeah, it's there.
People
And
be trapped.
they have it padlocked
Good.
and everything, so.
Perfect.
any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all right, we'll go ahead and open it to public comment. Anybody like to comment? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the commission, and I will entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve a proposed high-impact special use permit application and commercial planned unit development amendment and COMZ rezoning application submitted by Daren and Kathy Stone for the existing Westview RV Park based on the following. The proposed use is in conformity with the code. The proposed use shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on other property in the area, and public utilities and services are available or can be made available to support uses with the proposed zoning, and no conditions.
Okay,
I'll second that.
any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and call a vote.
Commissioner Farian,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Saunders,
Aye.
Commissioner Lynch,
Aye.
Commissioner Neergard.
Aye.
All right. Motion was carried, vote was unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Farian,
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Here?
Commissioner Saunders,
Here.
Commissioner Lynch,
Here.
Commissioner Neergard.
Here.
All right. Notice is hereby given that the Montezuma County Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing and determining recommendations to be made to the Board of County Commissioners regarding a proposed high-impact special use permit application submitted by Smith Materials LLC, agent Nathan Barton, on property located at 22186 Highway 145, Dolores, Colorado, consisting of 50 acres, more or less, located east and west of Highway 145, situated in Section 22, Township 38 North, Range 14 West, New Mexico Prime Meridian. This is a public hearing. Was the public notice published?
Yes.
Was evidence of letters to adjoining neighbors and mineral owners submitted?
Yes.
And was the sign posted?
Yes, it was.
Okay. If the applicants want to come forward? All right. Don, can we have planning department findings, please?
Yes, this is the Line Camp mine, and it was previously given a high-impact permit in 2002. It did have a 5-year stipulation that it would then expire. In March of 2007, they went back to the commissioners and got that extended to 2012. but at that point it expired. So they are applying for their high impact permit, special use permit for that mining operation on Highway 145. It is on we've got two measurements, and the narrative has a third, so it's 166, 154 approximate acres, covers both sides of the highway. The west side is just basically the hillside up from the highway. They do have an access permit from CDOT from 2002 with certain stipulations. It does access an allowable 19.9 acres of the pit to be open, the old line camp, and 10 acres of ag land. That has not been amended. That's still as it stands today. Electricity is available if they should need it for their operating equipment. Water, there is water rights for that site through the state. It's a combination of industrial use as well as ag use on that. No septic system, portable toilets, fire mitigation. They recommend a plan for the property due to the high risk per the 2020 wildfire risk analysis. Mr. Barton has addressed that, and I believe that Wildfire Adapted is satisfied with that. Okay, and the weed department recommends a weed plan, and I believe they are also coordinating a weed plan with the weed department on that aspect. Part of the property is in a floodplain, not the mine site specifically. All the other conditions of the mining operation are under the state permit, CDPHE, air, water, the EPA. So we don't try and oversight what the state has going there. So that is all current and under their purview.
Okay. So, do you guys have anything else to add on that? Yeah, okay.
If I may, my name is Nathan Barton. My address local is P.O. Box 88, Cortez, Colorado. I am an environmental engineer licensed in the state of Colorado. My company, Wasteline, and I have been involved with this project from its beginnings in 2001. We designed the site, we permitted the site with the state and with the county, and we've been involved continuously since then. And again, to add to Don's information, just to further clarify, hopefully not muddy the situation, the state permit M 2001-001 was issued in 2001 before the application was made to the county. It is for the life of the mine. It was amended to add some additional acreage in 2011. Before 2012, at that time, information was presented to the Planning Commission, to the county commissioners, but no one was able to find any record that any action was actually taken. The request at that time had been made to allow the county permit to also be extended for the life of the mine. And that is, again, why we are here today, because officially that expired. And we need to have that. This was discovered as a result of transferring the property. Val Truelson, the present owner, or the now past owner, Grant Smith purchased that as part of the, he purchased it at auction. And again, I should introduce, for those who don't know, Grant and one of his sons that are Smith Materials. They are intending to take over the same operation that originally was permitted by Triad Western's Four States Aggregates and later by Stone, Sand, and Gravel. And the proposal is to continue the mining and processing of sand and gravel that is needed by the county at that location. There have been, as far as we know, no complaints, no objections received from any adjacent property owners, any travelers. There have been no violations of state or federal or county regulations in the approximately 22 years that the pit has been operating. Our proposal is to continue the operations because material is still needed. It's used now primarily and will be used in the future to produce sand and gravel aggregates for ready mix that Smith's Materials produces there on Road T. And of course, that material is virtually all used right here in Montezuma County. We don't take that elsewhere. We are in compliance and have permits for water rights, for water discharge, for air, for land, including reclamation, for traffic access, for hazardous materials reclamation, the floodplain issue and water use was addressed not just by the state but also by the Army Corps of Engineers back in 2001 and 2002 and deemed to be acceptable, as well as wetlands and related issues. The Colorado Department, well now the Department of Parks and Wildlife, also has reviewed and had approved that at that time. We do not plan any night operations, obviously can't have winter operations, especially this year. But even in a more typical year that we've had the last decade or so, winter operations have not been a concern. As Don mentioned, we submitted the fire plan, the weed plan, made sure that water rights are still applicable and that we are still in compliance as far as floodplain and related issues. The acreage issue is a confusing one because different people, including the IRS and Colorado Department of Transportation and the county, all have different numbers. This was originally supposed to be a 4, as you can see from the map, a 4 by 40 acre, 4 quarter sections in a line. The right-of-way for Highway 145 was originally the right-of-way for the railroad. And so apparently there's differences as far as how much right-of-way, how wide it is. Is it 60 feet? Is it 132 feet? Nobody knows. And that's the difference. And of course, it also makes the assumption that the surveyors back in the 1870s made sure that they were all 40-acre quarters. And as you can see from the map, they probably aren't, just based on the lines. But those are issues that are of importance. What we are proposing, in addition, obviously, to being able to continue to mine and process material there, is to also let you commissioners know that we are looking at the potential of expanding, since the property is now totally owned by Grant and not by another landowner. We are looking at applying for another amendment to the Colorado Department of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety to allow mining to the north of the existing location. We'll continue to use the same access and would continue to make sure that we are never actively mining more than the 19.1 acres that the CDOT access permit allows for. Whether that comes out to a total of 50 acres, slightly over or slightly under, depends on exactly what areas are established as far as buffer zones, particularly along the river where we are required by the state to maintain a 100-foot buffer zone from the high water mark, the ordinary high water mark of the river. We are also beginning the process of pursuing a land exchange with the U.S. Forest Service. It would transfer all of the property west of Highway 145 and that property, that little triangle in the southeast corner east of the river, to the Forest Service in exchange for that long, narrow sliver of property west of the river. It's immediately adjacent to the ranch headquarters, to the old line camp itself. And we believe, after having some preliminary discussion, that that is a possibility. Those land exchanges can take years because they have to go through the full NEPA process. They have to make that available for multiple phases of public comment. And so this is not something that's going to be immediately done. Should point out also that the life of the pit itself is unknown because it's based on demand and on the availability of material in there. Our water rights currently include, as Don mentioned, both industrial and agricultural, what's irrigated pasture land in there. Part of that irrigated pasture land was officially dried up in 2001 to transfer to water to be able to be used for washing material, but also evaporation from the ponds. We are currently limited by the court decree to 20 acres of ponds, of which we have about 13, less than 14 acres currently in water during high water. That has to be measured when the river levels, because the ponds are connected to the river hydraulically, and so as the river goes up and down, so do the ponds go up and down. So we have room for additional ponds and have water rights for that, but obviously the irrigation would not be needed if we expand ponds into the north. And the intent that was addressed in the 2001 and 2002 reviews, and again in 2007 and 2011, included materials such as the aesthetics. People expressed that they did not want nice rectangular or square ponds as some of the other mining operations up the Dolores River Valley are. And that is why it's such an irregular site. Intention to ensure that there was some, and that is in the intent of Smith's Materials as well, to continue to follow those practices that have both provided material and ensured that there were few or no concerns about the various issues that were addressed when this was first applied for and the permit was first granted. Thank you for the opportunity to address this, and you will begin under the procedures for amendment of a reclamation permit by state, by DRMS, and under the requirements for land exchanges. The county definitely has both the right and the authority to provide comment and, if necessary, to block such measures if the county deems that that's not in accordance with the best interests of the county.
Thank you. I do have a few follow-up questions for you. So the CDOT access limits you to 19 some odd acres
19.1 acres, yes, sir.
for mining operation at a time.
Active mining operations.
What constitutes active mining operation? Can you store aggregate in a spot and then pull from it? Is that active?
Yes, active mining operations includes actual excavation and the area that you need for processing and for stockpiles, both of the pit run material before it's processed and then the construction materials, the sand and gravel, after they're crushed and screened and washed.
Gotcha.
It does not include areas that have been mined out that are in process of reclamation or areas that have not been disturbed.
So in the potential land exchange and or moving the mining operation to the north side of 145, would you then reclaim the old pit so that your operation moves to the new position? Is that how that would work?
Yes, sir. In essence, that's in effect. The plan is to go ahead and reclaim the south areas that have been mined and have ponds. Technically, the ponds themselves constitute reclamation, although the shorelines are still shown as not being reclaimed because they obviously have to have final shaping and things such as seeding.
Okay.
But that would be the intent. And there's a dual purpose for this. Number one, a financial warranty is required to be posted for all unreclaimed, unreleased mined areas, so it's in best interest to go ahead and get that done. The second is, again, to demonstrate to our neighbors that we are good neighbors.
Gotcha. Okay. In the narrative or in the permit somewhere, I saw that you're asking for no limitation on operation hours. Is that correct?
We are asking for that on an as-needed basis, with the understanding, as has been done with other operations in the county and in adjacent counties, that we could come back to the county in case there's a need for a specific project, for instance, a CDOT project where material might be needed that isn't immediately available. However, the intent is normally, number one, we do not operate at night. It's unsafe, especially around water. Number two, we can't operate in the winter. But there may be a situation in which we need to come back to the county and say CDOT needs 20,000 tons of Class 6 base course, and they just let the contract. They need it in 3 weeks. We're going to need to operate extended hours, perhaps on Saturdays. Again, the Grant and his family are not going to operate on a Sunday.
So are you asking for a special use permit or the option for a special use permit in the event that something like that happens? Or are you asking for a blanket term to, at your discretion, operate outside of the normal operating hours?
What we are asking for is for the right to come on an expedited basis back to the planning department, perhaps to authorize planning director, for the commission and the county commissioners to authorize the planning director to allow extended hours given adequate justification. No, I don't consider that a blanket. I consider that a.
Sure, I understand. It's a case by case. That's what my clarifying, what I was looking for clarification on. Was it just a blanket term that you, at your discretion, you can operate outside of the normal operating hours when you want to? Or are you first going to come before the board and ask for that special use permit in that specific instance?
And what we'd be doing would be asking for that permission or permit.
Okay.
The one thing that we would be concerned with is the need to, in some cases, expedite that. As far as a 2-month turnaround time on something like that might not be possible.
Gotcha. And then I have 2 more, sorry. You mentioned in 2011, you asked for to be granted access indefinitely for the permit without stipulation of having to come before the board, right? Am I correct in that?
Yes, instead of a 5-year
Right.
term to have to be renewed every 5 years to basically extend to the life of the mine.
And so that was subsequently denied at that time?
Kathy and I understood that was approved at that time, but we weren't able to find any documentation.
Gotcha.
The county commissioners actually did make that approval.
Okay. And then, since the permit expired in 2012, has it been operational since?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Again, without any notification.
So you were under the impression that it was
We were under
indefinite?
the impression that we were legally operating.
Gotcha.
And that has been our situation since then. We
Okay.
haven't actually actively excavated material in the past couple of years. Instead, material's been brought on to wash
Okay.
and then shipped out. But yes, we have been operating.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Anybody else?
Has any of the mine site been fully reclaimed?
No, it has not, except, again, the bodies of water, the ponds are
Right.
considered beyond the first 10 or so feet of the normal, ordinary high water mark.
Right.
To be reclaimed.
Is there a reason why?
Yes, sir, a number of reasons. Number one, we wanted to make sure that we're able to go ahead and get all the material available before doing that reclamation. So that's why the bond has been posted in that way. And number two is to make sure that when we do begin that final reclamation, that we're able to do that in a way that we can then quickly request reclamation release from the state. And I should also point out that the county also has the right to comment and object if reclamation release is requested from DRMS. That's part of the DRMS process before funds can be released on the financial warranty and before the area can be declared reclaimed.
So quick follow-up. On the 150 some odd acres that's there, providing that you only mine 19.1 acres at a time. Is the intention to go north of 145 if you're in a land exchange negotiation at this point?
To go north of 145?
Or west of 145, I'm sorry.
No, sir.
Okay,
No, sir. The conditions there would be uneconomical.
okay,
And that's probably a polite term.
sure. So then the mine site would subsequently be moved just north of the mine where it is there
Yes,
throughout that acreage,
Yes,
19
working way north.
19 acres at a time, right?
yes, sir.
Okay,
Working north to, past the old homestead, the old ranchstead, and on up to the top, to the north end of the operation.
gotcha.
Could you explain this diagram a little bit more? I was reading some of the notes to the side, and I'm not sure I understand what's going on there. It seems to indicate that what is in blue, now the colors that I have are different than what you see on the screen. but,
Yes, that's.
There's a
that's
blue
fault of the
area with
programs.
that's currently permitted, and then there's a larger area with the magenta line that is future planned permitting through the DRMS.
Future proposed, yes. The dark blue, including that little tail to the south that you see down there, is the current DRMS permit. The south end, and Don, I stand corrected, I forgot, we did get reclamation release on that little tail, 3/10 of an acre, because that's where the water line that allows discharge into the river.
Okay.
Ponds to do a better job of maintaining control of the water levels. That's that little tail that should, not quite where the hand is, but a little bit further down there.
Oh,
Yeah.
just down
That
here.
dark
Oh,
blue,
this strip?
The little
that little
canal
strip
looking
right
thing.
there,
I
yes.
gotcha.
That officially has been released. And that was done, I believe, in 2017, with county approval, I might add, because the county had the right even on that 3/10 of an acre to review and do that. But the dark blue, the original acreage, and then the additional acreage to the south there, that rectangle that has some water there, is the current DRMS permit. The larger magenta that follows the river and follows the highway, goes up to the full north end of the property, that would be the maximum extent that we could mine, assuming that DRMS and the county allow that.
Yeah,
And that's based, including buffer zones that might be needed, especially along the river where we have to have 100-foot.
can you explain that buffer for me, please? You said it was a requirement along the river to have 100-foot. What is a buffer? What does that mean? You
A
can't do
buffer-
anything within it?
No, a buffer means that we can do minor things, for instance, what might be needed for stormwater control or for preventing, well, weed control and things like that, but we can't actually excavate and mine. The concern that is a statewide address is a funny thing called pit capture, where during high water, the river can actually change its course and the pit captures the water. That's what that 100-foot setback is designed to reduce the probability of that happening.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know, that wasn't anywhere in this documentation, and your magenta line goes right up to the river in my copy,
Because
so.
normally, and again, things have changed as far as normal procedure in now 23 years, 22 years with DRMS. In the past, they always wanted the boundaries of the affected area to be outside the buffer zone, but then they recognize that there's still a need sometimes to allow some activity, some disturbance of the land inside that buffer zone. So now the modern permits, I know it sounds kind of hard or kind of strange to refer to a 23-year-old or a 22-year-old permit as ancient, but in Denver terms it is, to allow that to be addressed if we need to go in and do something there. Again, not actually excavating, not actually mining, probably not even removing trees except as necessary for fire mitigation and things like that.
How deep do you go to mine the gravel in the areas where you're allowed to do that on the property?
Generally, there's only 3 or 4 feet of overburden, and the gravel that we've been down to, I don't think we've been any lower than about 30 feet below the original ground surface, so we're looking at 24 to 25 feet of material that can be mined and processed. And again, that varies because it is a river bottom. It can vary significantly even over a very short distance.
Sure. How long have the grants been part owners or whole owners of the property?
We went to the auction, we got in 6 months ago, we took, it turned over the January 22nd, so we paid
Okay.
February 22nd, I'm sorry.
Okay, so all the history that has been developed up until then was under ownership of someone else.
Prior ownership, yes.
And so your ownership is from pretty much now going forward. So any, I guess what I'm trying to point out is that any history of whether it was operated well or poorly or whatever is on them, and we don't have a history of these operators.
Yep.
They need to establish their operating history, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Correct, they don't have any history on the site.
Am I correct in, maybe I misunderstood this, but DRMS, do they have to approve your location of the mine throughout the property? Or are you able to move that mine at your discretion as long as you're not surpassing the 19?
No, DRMS has to approve any, it's an amendment to add any area, take away any area.
Gotcha, so they will
It used to
assess.
be, you might recall, 30 years ago, you could do a rolling
Sure,
on a
Yep.
10 acre, on a 110, you could do a rolling thing and just, you reclaim 5 acres and you open another, but that's not been allowed now for about 25 years.
so the assessment of risk in the river bottom valley will be made by DRMS each time you request to move the mine?
Correct.
Okay.
And again, to answer Mr. Lynch's concern, Brand and his sons have been operating here in the county, not at this location, but at other locations for many, many years. And I think have a very good track record for how they treat their neighbors and how they treat the community. They've been operating the ready mix plant, which they also purchased from Stone Sand and Gravel for a number of years now on Road T, and have demonstrated to both county and to neighbors that they are able to do what they say, and that they are very much concerned for that. And they have worked very closely with Kathy and Daren over the past years. And if I may, the other thing, make sure we're all clear, ownership of the land can be totally separate from what the state calls the mine operator. So Triad Western's 4 States Aggregates LLC was the original permittee or mine operator, but Val Truelson was the landowner. He had to issue a right to enter document, a sworn or attested notarized document that says they have the right. When they transferred that from 4 States Aggregates to Stone Sand and Gravel, that had to be updated by Val. Now that the ownership and currently only the land ownership is actually in the Smiths. They don't yet have the
Mining permit?
the mine permit, thank you, sorry.
Mhm.
They are not officially designated as the mine operator. Instead, they have an agreement with Stone Sand and Gravel to be able to operate on the site. Stone Sand and Gravel is currently still responsible for that. One of the reasons that is still the case is because we have not yet been able to provide the necessary document to the state as far as the transfer of land and therefore a right to enter. And the second is that currently until the board acts on this, the state would have to say, no, we can't change to a new operator because we don't have evidence that the county is allowing that.
So what we are permitting is really basically the land.
Yeah, I
It
guess,
has to do with the land, not the mine.
so my question to you, Don, is there, can you give rights in perpetuity as they're requesting, so that they don't have to re-up every 5 years?
Typically, our high-impact permits do not have an end date, other than if it ceases to operate for a year or more, or changes operation.
So did that change since the original application from them?
This one had its special circumstances because of the whole issues of getting it permitted in the first place.
So it was a condition on the approval? That
Correct.
there were every 5 years needs to be
Yeah,
approved?
the original, oh, I've got it here. This is the renewal in 2007. It's the basic language from our land use code. And basically what they did is came in here and stated that the Board of County Commissioners reviewed the high impact permit 385 on March 12th, 2007, wherein the request to extend the permit for an additional 5 years was granted. All conditions applied to the original high impact permit, a copy of which is attached herewith, shall remain in effect and subject for renewal. This is the original from 2002. These are the conditions at the time. Permit shall be based on a 5-year operational period. Time of operation, 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. 4 states ag responsible for required drivers of the equipment. CDOT, they worked with CDOT as far as AC/DC turn lanes, whatever, but they got everything coordinated there. I don't know if this member advisory board ever came about. They never closed anything, so the reclamation board wouldn't have had any purpose. This bond deposited at the treasurer's office does not exist. Weed control, and then follow the land use code. If you expand, increase it more than 10%, then you have to amend your high impact permit. So what they did at the March 28th, 2011 meeting is they were looking to expand. And so the planning commission, or the county commissioners requested a map of what the 50 acres was that was, I understand right, it was part of the original high impact permit approval. They came back on April 11th with that map. In reviewing that map, they were still within the confines of that 50 acres, so they didn't have a motion, didn't have to change or do anything. That permit was still in existence, still operating, and they were still within that 50 acre footprint.
So then, on the hours of operation to expedite a request for a special use permit, is that something that is doable, right?
Can it be an ministerial type?
That
rather than
would have to run by council per our land use code.
Right.
That I don't know. So if you'll look here at this, this is what was presented in 2011. So the black line's the 50 acres, if I'm correct, Nathan? This 50 acre area is depicted in the black line,
Yes.
south property line,
Yes.
highway. This is the line camp building, this is access. They did have 18 acres from DRMS, from what I understand, and then that was increased to 22.64, which is just a hair bigger. Obviously, they're not gonna mine out their access road, so. that, you know, how maps are and the state.
And if I may, that access road is still definitely a permanent post-mining feature, because it's the only access for the.
Right, yeah, part of CDOT's
We had to close.
plan is this was terminated, the old access road to the line camp building. They had to close this access to retain this one. As far as land swaps, future property ownership, who owns it, where you might extend stuff to, from my perspective, is kind of a far reach. Because we don't know what, or who, you know, where that property boundary is gonna be.
It's gonna look like.
What's gonna be affected if it's in 28 years from now. If there's not a stipulation on ending the high impact permit or automatic renewal review, then, you know, it's way out there and nobody knows.
Right.
The black line, which depicts the 50 acres, which encompasses pretty much what they're doing, what they've been doing, to me, seems like a fair depiction of the extent now. And then in the future, if anything progresses, changes, demand, they can always come back and amend the high impact permit.
Yeah.
If I may, that north area, north of the current access road, that area has not been mined.
Correct.
That's part of the 50 acres, and there has been no mining activity at all in that,
Right,
in that
right.
area. But that's why, again, we're requesting the notification, obviously, unless the Forest Service does approve a land exchange, it's mainly a matter of informing you all, as we wish to inform the county commissioners themselves, to make sure that we don't have any showstoppers, that we address any issues that might come up so we can be proactive. The reason for the 79 is because that would include that area still in the existing parcel to the north, that you can see on this map, to the north of the old access road, which still shows up very well there. That irregular shaped area from there on north. And again, that would have to be added. We would have to apply for an application amendment to DRMS, and the county at that time would still have exactly the same power, the same right to review and reject.
I think what Don was stating, though, is that to include a high-impact permit to land that's not been exchanged yet, right? With the option to add, you know, that if we do this land exchange, that the high-impact permit automatically transfers to the new land, right?
But that's not what we're asking for. We're not asking for an automatic.
Okay,
We're simply wanting to advise you and asking you to include in your minutes and recommendations that this is something that will be considered, or it's something that you will not consider under any circumstances, because why spend the time and money to go to the Forest Service for something if we know that the county is opposed to it?
gotcha.
And it's the same thing on that expansion to the north inside the existing boundaries. If the county is opposed to doing that, then why should we waste literally thousands of dollars applying to the state for something that the county will reject?
So you're asking for the consideration if and when the land exchange happens, that we strongly consider allowing the high-impact permit to include the additional land being added?
Yes.
Okay.
But it would be an amendment.
It would still have to come before the commission.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Okay. Anything else from the commission?
Nathan, what's roughly the distance of this current Forest Service strip, river to property line? I mean, is it, I guess that, if this is 500 feet, I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's a couple hundred feet?
Well, it's 300 to 400 and some feet. across there. So
Oh,
even
okay.
taking the 100 feet out from the river, that still gives a number of additional acres.
I gotcha.
Well, we'll open it to public comment. If anybody from the public would like to comment, please come up, state your name and address before.
You'll need to turn that microphone on, ma'am. There you go.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Julie Schweigert. My address is 6223 East Turquoise Avenue, Paradise Valley, 85253. And my husband and I are the property owners to the north of this. And so I want to say I'm not opposed to property owners doing what they want on their property, but I am concerned about the impacts from this. We've owned this property, I can't remember the exact date when we bought it. It was bought with the intent that when we retired, we would be able to come to this property, and my husband enjoys fishing and hunting and fishing on the river, and it was purchased specifically because it did border the Forest Service property there. The mining that went on previously, and has been going on for essentially 20 years with no reclamation, was kind of a concern because you do hear it, and as they move further north, I think the impact is likely. I talked with the state today about it, and they had not yet submitted an amendment to their permit. And the state's view of it is that the noise, the truck traffic, the hours of operation, the visual impacts, the effects on the property values, and all of that is under the jurisdiction of the county, because the county is more likely to be restrictive of it than the state. And so they don't get involved in that. And so I guess I would just request that the potential for a limit to be put on it, because if we're looking at unlimited time frame, then does that mean my lifetime? Does that mean my kid's lifetime? How long are we going to be impacted by the mine? And what does that do to our property value? And I believe some of the water also for the mining comes across our property. And is additional water needed? Is additional discharge needed? Does it impact our well? There's a lot of potential impacts from this, and the materials that were sent to me didn't even show the potential mining area to the north, so I could even see if it came close to our boundary. I don't know what is typically done to mitigate the effects of it, but we get, additional dust, additional mosquitoes, whatever it is. Mosquitoes are bad enough as it is in that area. So the ponds could have additional mosquitoes and sometimes West Nile virus. So I guess that's where, and the traffic wasn't clear in the application to me, because there were certain numbers, but then it said the state allowed additional numbers, up to 75 vehicles an hour in and out of there. So I wasn't clear on what the intent was as far as trucking and so forth. Is that my 3 minutes?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like? Okay.
Good evening. I've come for work, so excuse my appearance. My name is Tim Allwell, O-L-W-E-L-L. I live at 22900 Highway 145, Dolores, which is about 1.5 miles north of this property. My only concern is, has there been an environmental impact statement done? As far as I'm concerned, this is a new permitting process. The mining at this property had ceased years ago, so I don't see it as an amendment to another permit. I see it as a brand new permitting process. And don't tell me what studies they did 20 years ago in 2001. I want to know right now what the environmental impact of reopening that mine is. Specifically, I'm told by the Dolores Water Conservation District that 60% of the water that comes down that valley is subterranean. and it goes right through that property. My well is 20 feet below my property line, They're talking about digging 30 feet below the property. So they're hitting that subterranean water. All I ask is that you require an environmental impact statement, current, not a 20-year-old statement, not a 40-year-old statement, not something that was dreamt up 60 years ago, but a current impact statement, please, on how reopening that mine will affect the water that we use to drink, recreate in, irrigate with, the whole McPhee Reservoir, the water that goes on to the Colorado River, needs to be clean. And I don't know what the impact of their mining would be, but I sure would like it studied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's James Aiken. 21675, that little A block right down there in the bottom right-hand corner. I believe my brother called, spoke to one of you. Like he said, don't care what you do with your property, I'm not gonna tell you what to do with your property.
Please address,
I'm sorry.
Please address
Yes.
all comments to us. Thank you.
My apologies. Not one to say, as the young lady over there said, to tell people what to do with their property. But I kind of echo what she says as far as the timeframes, and then also the hours of operations. I didn't see in this if it was, I missed it, whatever, but like the permit from 2011, they had the hours of operation. We'd like something like that if, for you to take that in consideration if possible. Obviously, because the neighbors around there, the noise, the high impact and everything like that. That's really all I had.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Doolittle, and I'm at 22840 Highway 145. We have the property that's just north of Julie Swigert's and Dee Swigert's. I have two questions. I want to understand how you guys can operate.
Sir, please address everything our way. Please address all questions, comments our
Oh,
way.
to you guys, yeah, I just want to understand how they can operate within the 70 decibel limit that's stated on the permit application at the property line. And two, there was a comment in the application about there would be no mining in wooded areas. There's a lot of, cottonwood forests between, kind of the clear-cut pasture area and the Swigert's property line. And my question is, can that be clear-cut? So essentially, can they take all those trees out and then mine up to that property line? So those are my two questions.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name's Lisa Weeks. I live with Jim, same address, obviously. I just have questions about if there are certain things that, like say the decibel level gets to higher than what it was supposed to be. How is any of this going to be enforced? That's really all I want to know, is to being within the parameters of what the commission is going to allow. How is that going to be enforced? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Then we'll bring it back to the commission. Public comment is closed. Any planning commission discussion?
Well, you bring up some good points. especially decimal level noise. And of course, that's all metered, so that's very easily proven, if you will. You know, and whether it's you as an adjacent property owner that brings a machine out to measure the decibel, or they do it, it can be identified, put it that way. What were some of the other questions?
So are there any plans to mitigate noise levels at property line if that is a concern? And what plans are there?
always actions taken to mitigate sound levels. The actual state limit is currently 55 dBA, decibels type A, at the property line. And that is one that we have found, and I personally have done some of the monitoring myself, and my company have found that that is very easily doable with modern equipment and with proper positioning, location, and maintenance.
Okay. Now, it's 55 decibels after 7 o'clock, is it not?
Right, 55 from 7 PM to 7 AM. 70
So,
from 7 AM
70
to
for-
7
yeah.
PM.
Okay, yeah.
Does those noise levels include your backup alarms?
Yes, they do, which is a problem that we faced in many locations across the.
Right, because
across
you've
the
got
state.
OSHA standards at one level and safety standards and then noise
OSHA
levels.
standards,
Yeah,
and there are ways to work around that, to make sure, and it's easily tested these days also, to make sure that we do comply. But again, some of the mitigation measures include things like berms around the perimeter, and the fact that most of the actual working is well below the original ground level. And sound is energy. It travels in a straight line. We can either absorb it with materials or we can block it and cause it to reflect.
I would like to add, I've been hearing some concerns, so where the access road is pretty much due middle of the property north and south. And with no neighbors being close to that access road, they're both on the south end, both on the north end, give or take 50 acres right apart. If we could put our crusher somewhere centrally located where your main source of noise is, we could try to mitigate all the noise to the north and to the south. Now, we will have to move materials from both ends of the pit to the crusher, and we can't do nothing about backup alarms because that's just standard. But where most of your noise comes from is that crusher, and if we could move it somewhere centrally located to look how far our neighbors to the south and to the north with some dirt berms, I think we could really mitigate the sound to no more than what you hear traveling up and down 145.
And you're willing to do that?
Yes.
Okay. There was a concern about clearing the land. Do you have a response with that?
Well, we're not gonna clear any land right now. I mean, if we get our extension, that clear field where you're on now right there is what we wanna mine. We're not wanting to clear the trees to the river.
So then, as far as Don, if you scroll down just a little for me.
You want to see up here?
Yeah, so this top leg, right, that gets you close to the adjoining neighbors.
We are, and there's also that buffer zone that's in place.
The 100-foot buffer zone?
Yeah, so we could, I mean, 100 foot of trees, it's a lot of trees to block views and.
Totally understand. My
There's
question.
your noise buffer.
Yeah, well, I guess my concern though is at any point in time, are you going to, is there a plan or are you setting limitations that you will not be clearing that leg of trees to mine?
Well, we couldn't clear the leg of we will not clear the leg of trees for that buffer zone regardless, because it would do us no good. We like our property, I mean, that's our property.
Sure.
We want it to look as good as we can from the road. You know, we're wanting this thing to look immaculate, that's our plan. And then to provide, services to the community. You know, we're gonna provide jobs
Mm-hmm.
with truck drivers, labor hands. I mean, we wanna make this thing as nice as we can. We're river property owners as well,
Sure.
and so we take it very serious.
I guess my question and my line of questioning was adding up to that leg at the northern part there between the magenta section.
Mm-hmm.
That's clearly more than 100 feet long,
It is, yes.
right?
I don't have no intention right now of taking any of
6,500 is good.
So-
750.
Then would you be willing to state that there is a limitation that you will not enter that area?
I think we would be able to get that in a statement in writing, yes, sir.
Okay.
Almost 1,000.
Perhaps something like 500 feet
And no, it's almost 1,000.
Where those trees start.
from
Like
that.
800, 1,000 feet.
The point being that into the trees. Now, the additional land exchange that you're requesting here does show a ton of trees in that area. So,
We're leaving all those trees, we're not gonna mine it.
okay, so you're just doing the land exchange. You don't want to mine that new section.
Not to harm for the river, no.
Okay,
We're leaving the trees. What's left to mine out there in those open fields will give us all the sand and washed rock we need.
gotcha. Okay,
I mean, we're not planning on doing any class 6, no CDOT stuff. It's all we want is our mine, is our sand and our washed rock. And I think with those opening fields, there'll be enough there to last us for 25, 30 years.
gotcha. The hours of operation being that,
Yeah, I would like to fire up our equipment at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then get to mining at 8, and we'll shut down at 5. And we're not in this to try to crush 7 days a week.
yeah,
We're not into that.
right,
We like our weekends as well. And we want to maintain a good working relationship with our neighbors, both to the north and to the south.
okay,
We're avid outdoorsmen. We love the river access. We love everything right there. We just want to maintain a good relationship with our neighbors while being able to provide our ready-mix plant with the materials needed to keep building for people who want to put a porch or a patio or a new
Sure.
house, you know?
sure. And
If I
then,
may, the limitation that the one commenter made on that as far as no wooded areas is part of the original DRMS application. And that would require, if there were any desire to do that, that would require, again, going through that approval process, that amendment process with the state, which in turn triggers an opportunity for the county to object or agree. The same thing, and traditionally, one of the state requirements on buffer zones from neighbors that are particularly concerned is a minimum of 200 feet.
gotcha. Has there been an environmental study done?
Yes, sir. More than just the one in 2001. The application for DRMS for a reclamation permit is in essence the same as an environmental assessment. Our company and myself have done environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. So I can speak from personal professional knowledge that is incorporated. It also had to be done with the expansion. It was done back in the early 2000s. That was updated, and it will have to be done for any expansion, for any amendment that is submitted now to DRMS. And that will include all of the usual things that we associate with environmental site assessments: climate, wildlife, fish, groundwater, surface water, all of those. Those things were addressed. Obviously, the information that was developed in 2001 and then in 2000, I think it was 2007, I've lost track now, will be used and will be verified. It
So will
won't
that
be
be-
It won't be a start from scratch and go look at the past type of thing.
Will the environmental study be available prior to the county commissioners approving this? Or disapproving it?
No, sir, because that is, again, as she pointed out, trying to point out, we have not applied.
Okay,
Because it doesn't make sense to apply to the state if the county is not going to deny it. But that certainly would make sense as a condition, although it's an automatic condition, because the state will not allow an amendment to a 112 permit without going through that process of addressing all of those issues in the application.
okay,
And that is something that is not something that's, you don't sit down in an evening
of course, yeah,
and write
obviously,
that. It's
yeah,
something that can take weeks and even months. as it also includes consultation, Federal Fish and Wildlife, Corps of Engineers, CPW, even Empire Electric, and other local providers of things are all part of that process.
Gotcha.
One other thing, down on the south end where you got the blue box right there, that's what we're gonna mine. And I've done test holes already, and we got 14 foot in the hit rock. I don't know how deep they went in the water ponds, but I don't think there's anything up there close to 30 feet. And I assure you, there where it hasn't been mined, I have done test holes, and they're 12 to 14.
And that is my error when I said 30 feet.
Gotcha.
And I can dig a hole and let anyone see it, because you can only dig down a solid rock.
And if I may also, the idea of subterranean water, groundwater. All of the existing ponds are in the groundwater. It's called it's the alluvial aquifer that's associated with the river. When the river rises, water in the ponds rise, and vice versa. So we are already in that water. But we had to demonstrate to the state and to the county in 2001 that we were not affecting water quality. We had to do drawdowns on adjacent wells to demonstrate that we were not going to create a problem for people with shallow wells. That information admittedly is now more than 20 years old, but the laws of physics and the laws of hydrology have not changed.
Gotcha.
One of the neighbors mentioned something about mosquitoes. Is there anything that you guys do in regard to mitigating mosquito growth out of the ponds?
That issue has not been brought up before, in part because usually there is some movement of water in those ponds, and mosquitoes breed in still water. So water collecting in tires and on equipment and things like that is usually a far greater problem with mosquitoes. But just as with weed control, it's something that we would address with the county, as landowners always do. If there is a potential for a problem developing, then we need to be proactive and make sure it doesn't happen.
So what I think I heard you say is the water in those ponds is not stagnant.
No, it is constantly moving. That's one reason that we had to have the permitted outfall to the south there, was to make sure that we had movement through there.
Any other discussion?
I got one question back to the original permit of the 50-acre site. Does that pretty much capture, for the far foreseeable future, everything that you would be interested in?
I think you still need to go a little bit north.
At least to a point where if in 15 years you wanted to go, you know.
Yeah, when they closed the road there, Don,
Mm-hmm.
up there where you're, would go up farther, and would go to the tree line.
Yeah, that boundary of the trees.
Yeah, which, it's probably another, quite a ways out there. See that road?
This road
Yeah,
here,
that's when they closed, and I would get that, would do the field there, do the tree.
this one as well.
right there.
It would be roughly another 1,000 feet.
I mean, I'm with
Again,
my
keeping in
dad.
mind, it's a mile, the site is a mile long.
I think that would suffice for us with using the trees as a general boundary. I think that would be more than adequate for what we need to provide for our ready mix and for our customers. And while hopefully maintaining good relationships with our neighbors to the north and the south. And with our crusher being centrally located where the most noise is, that's, we're doing the best we can to keep the noise from the north and to the south.
So would that be a permanent crusher location, basically?
That's kind of.
And you'd haul back north and south to it?
Yeah, that's what we were thinking would be the best for everybody,
Right.
We want to be the good neighbor, We're just trying to make it the best for everybody, and make it feasible for us as well.
Okay.
Would you be looking at any material here south of the blue box? That's pretty much a setback limitation. Okay. So you're not gonna have to try and haul through your site with a ton of material from down here.
Right, yeah, everything we got left to mine there, we're gonna have to haul through our site down into the pressure.
Right, okay.
And then once we get that mined, then we'll start doing all of our reclamation up through there, make it look nice. Like I said, we won't go past the tree line, we'll just start cleaning everything up.
We want to make it as aesthetically appeasing from the road and to the neighbors to the south, the neighbors to the north. I mean, we want our property to be as valuable to us as possible, you know, the better we make it look, the more valuable it is. I mean, we're owning it. We're not just mining it. We actually own that land. So we want it to look as good as we make it look.
So I think just meeting, you know, you've heard public comment at this point, and this has been an operational mine for a long time. But I do think that with certain limitations, you could appease most people, okay? Limiting your hours of operation, I think that should be a condition. I think that limiting your growth north and or south and limitation to a mass majority of those trees, you know, then that should be another condition. The decibel concern, if it, I think it should potentially be monitored pretty consistently so that you're doing what you say you want to do, right? Which is be good neighbors. If you're not meeting that, take action to mitigate it, right?
I mean, we're using lots of new equipment, which is, you know, way quieter. We're not talking diesel motors that were in the 80s, you know, just
Sure.
ripping and roaring. We got a lot of new modern equipment that are used within city limits for city jobs, you know. And we're trying our best to keep our part, that way everybody else can be happy as well.
Sure. I do think another potential condition should be an environmental study, right? And like you said, it's going to happen when you apply for the permit. But showing that, I think this should be a condition, or the approval of the environmental study, you know, that it's not hazardous to the habitants around, should be a condition as well.
That'd be public.
What's that? Well, I mean, if you're a landowner below you, and if, as long as you're meeting those environmental standards, it doesn't change anything, right? But if it's discovered that something does change in those environmental standards, adjoining neighbors should know about that. I mean, am I wrong?
I would agree with that.
If I may, I understand the importance of having an environmental assessment identified, but by stating that obviously mining cannot be done without having a valid DRMS reclamation permit incorporates that and avoids the claim sometime in the future, oh, well, that was just that application. It doesn't follow precisely the procedure or the format of a standard NEPA, because it doesn't. But it addresses all those issues. So if there's a way of wording it.
So what you're saying is if you get approved for the DRMS permit, you are thus satisfying the environmental study
Yes, sir.
that it is safe for all the inhabitants around.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they're not gonna be able to get their permit unless we approve it. I mean, they can't put in for.
No,
the
I
application.
totally understand. I mean, I understand the process and why you're doing it. I'm trying to address all the surrounding concerns from all the other neighbors, right?
But it's an environmental study. Is that a local regulation or is that a federal regulation?
State,
State?
yeah.
The environmental part of the DRMS application is a state mandate.
Okay, well, DMS is state, but I'm talking about a regular environmental review, environmental study. Is that
You mean
follow?
under National Environmental Protection Act, that's a federal,
Well,
but this does not.
Yeah,
fall
there's
under-
different levels of,
Yeah, there's,
okay.
Impact
Well, What we
statements.
don't want is, I mean, I'd rather see one being done at the higher level of federal regulation, follow those mandates as opposed to a state. Because you have,
I don't think you can implement a federal environmental impact statement on private property.
I don't think you can either. I think,
You mean
In
that's,
fact, that's expressly
and that,
prohibited.
I mean, you're
then
looking
it
at
is a local- I'm
5 or
thinking of a
10
local
years
one
of,
that's done that.
Yeah.
so the
that-
only,
That's expressly prohibited under NEPA in order to avoid just that, that
right.
there's certain states of the union that would
Right,
immediately.
and, well, no, NEPA studies that can be done on private property. It can be done on private
If there is
property.
federal involvement.
right.
Well, okay, federal involvement would be,
You're looking for federal mineral rights.
yeah, and I'm looking at it, I'm associated with, utilities, public utilities,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, they're governed by the state, not necessarily
Mhm.
the feds. However, if you're doing cross-state lines, then you are bringing the feds involved. That's
I mean, you could revoke the high impact if they don't get that permit.
exactly. So then I take, I don't think the amendment or the condition of the environmental permit is necessary, being that you won't get the mine permit
Right.
if the environmental study comes back poor.
Yeah.
Okay?
negative.
So then at which point the high impact permit would be revoked, potentially.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be a
The
condition.
DRMS reclamation permit, we believe should be a condition of, as it has been in the past, should be a condition of the high impact and the special use permit.
So then that's the
So that
condition here.
Yeah,
incorporates
that's a
that.
condition.
Have to have that to have this.
Yeah, potentially with the, if approved, can be revoked if the DRMS permit does not come through.
Because in the same way, the DRMS permit can be revoked if we fail to meet the conditions established by the DRMS reclamation
Right.
permit.
And would you self-report? Like, would Don automatically find that out, or would you have to self-report if you lost your permit?
It's a very good question, or it's a very good point to make, and that kind of also answers one of the comments that was asked, how is this enforced? It's enforced in a multitude of ways. The RMS has inspectors. They are required to come out at least once a year and do a formal inspection of whether we are in compliance with the law, whether there are problems, whether the bond, the financial warranty is sufficient, and all of those matters are all part of theirs, but so does CDPHE, the Air Pollution Control Division, the Water Quality Control Division, and so does, under certain conditions, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Corps of Engineers, because of the closeness to the water, and the Division of Water Rights for the state, I forgot them. All of those agencies do have inspectors. All of those agencies do report not just to the person or organization creating the problem, but they also report to local government and to state government and to each other. If
Okay.
something goes wrong, everybody knows it very quickly. As far as being able to address complaints, all of those agencies are mandated to accept complaints, both anonymous and by name, from the public. They all have websites. They all have phone numbers. Many of them are toll-free phone numbers to call and make a complaint, and which they are mandated. For instance, the RMS, if they receive a complaint, they have 30 days in which to investigate.
So I think that's satisfactory. I
would
mean,
agree with you.
neighbors have the ability to work with you directly and a higher level to work with, should that not be
And I
satisfactory
should
for
also
them.
add Mine Safety and Health Administration, especially since we have water hazards.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it's highly
Also required to
regulated. I don't think we
inspect.
need to put
I would
any
At
other,
least annually.
I would agree with you.
any other hoops.
The limitations I was previously stating was the limitation of growth of the mine to the north, right? And then the
Hours.
hours of operation, and then the decibel readings.
noise.
Right, and the noise. Those conditions, I think, can very easily be met, so that you're maintaining, like you said, a good relationship with your neighbors.
Is this map a fairly close depiction of what you're considering as your total build-out, dig-out?
It's not,
Not too bad,
That
yeah.
looks really
Yeah,
good.
it's the area that we'd actually
The
be
north, you might
involved in
just go
excavating.
straight instead of that angle,
Right.
but that, yeah, I noticed that, yeah, just go straight across.
So you're looking at roughly 60 acres, which the original one was 50, so it's not too far
Like I said, that
different from that. Because we're probably gonna need to define that with some, as to
Let's wrap it up.
some natural boundaries or something, just so we can document it with the permit.
Again, if I may, the DRMS application requires that we mark the boundaries, and that's normally done by something like a 2-inch scheduled 80 PVC pipe with a orange fluorescent at the top, assuming the neighbors don't get upset with seeing that, to mark the exact corners, so we don't have to worry very much about trying to find that particular rock or that particular tree.
Right, okay,
And so that would be,
fair enough.
Okay.
I think we're gonna bring it back in, right?
Anything else? Okay.
So with your CDOT access permit, you're limited to 19 acres,
affected that we are actively mining.
which is basically what's disturbed right now.
Technically, only about 14 are disturbed right now, but yeah, before we start to go to the north, we're definitely going to have to make sure that we have that south area that Grant was talking about in condition, not necessarily release, because release, among other things, requires that we demonstrate that the grass is growing properly and that we have a season or two, but as far as the landscaping, as far as the terrain, having the topsoil and other soil replaced, and having proper slopes and proper drainage and stormwater and things like that. That's what we're gonna need to do in that lower 10
Right.
acres.
So is CDOT have oversight on that? Is that DMRS who, because it wouldn't be fully mitigated, DMRS isn't gonna sign off on it, so is it just kind of temporary
Well, what we
before you
normally
hit
do,
final?
we request a partial reclamation release,
Okay,
so that we do get something in writing from DRMS saying, we're not requesting a total release, we're gonna leave X number of dollars for necessary reseeding and weed control and stormwater management and things like that. So we would have that, because technically CDOT is supposed to be tracking things like that, but unfortunately, and I think you know that as well as I do right now,
yeah,
Region 5 is not keeping up with the task, and I don't think they will for a couple of years.
no, they're all sitting in those chairs over there.
And they're getting short-shifted by the budget keepers in Denver
Right.
as well, compared to the Front Range. So I think and that's why I intentionally didn't mention CDOT.
So as you move north, I mean, you're really not gonna get money back for mitigating what you've done because you're expanding it, so they'll just keep rolling that bond over? Okay. So it pretty much stays intact? They're not gonna reduce it and then make you
And with
post another
inflation right now, the chances are they're gonna wanna up it. Because what a dozer cost an hour 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago, it's a whole lot more than that now.
Right, right.
Okay.
Zach, I think the other thing I want to point out, at least myself, you guys probably have experience, you may know where they operate and how they operate and what their historical operations have been, but I don't. And so I'm tending to want to be conservative. I feel very uncomfortable giving an unlimited amount of time to a permit, as is what's being asked. And at least from my point of view, being new to the board and new to the process, I feel like it would be better to be conservative and put a 5-year limit on it.
Okay.
And then return. To reinstate the application or whatever you wanna call it. make sure they're in compliance with everything, and then just, yeah,
A 5 or 10-year review.
yeah.
So like it currently was, or previously was, up until 2011, where you thought it was perpetual in nature, right? Reverting back to the original permit style of 5 years, and then re-upping each additional or subsequent 5 years.
So are you putting an expiration date on it?
Is that what you're saying?
A review date?
Well,
I think a
don't know how
review-
it was- I don't know how it was done originally.
It was a 5-year
They did it in-
expiration prior.
Yeah, so that's what I'm suggesting. And I'm not suggesting that we say today that it needs to go in every 5 years after that. I think after 5 years, the determination should be made whether it is done for time memorial or 10 years.
10 years.
Or whatever.
Change the
The
date.
decision be made at that time, how long to go from there.
So would it be another public hearing? Is that what you're going back through the process?
I think, as I understand it, yes. Now, I'm not trying to make people pay more fees or anything. I'm not suggesting that another fee be paid to do that, but I think the review is what I would like to see after 5 years. Is that possible?
Would that review go to both P and Z and the county commissioners, or just a review by the county commissioners?
In my
with-
opinion, it would go
With no
for both.
application required, just a public hearing with review from the public and any agencies? I mean, we're gonna have to,
We have to
the
define-
review, you're gonna have to define who's reviewing this and to what extent.
Oh,
I mean, the land use code, if they're amending their high impact permit, then it's a new application that's amended to what they're doing.
And I see it as their high impact permit can be revoked at any juncture just because of negligence to comply or anything like that,
Just like we
right?
do with the lumberyard.
Exactly.
Yes.
So,
And it has to be, it's tied to the DRMS.
right, but what I'm saying is if they got the permit for DMRS and then at any point in time didn't comply with the conditions of the permit, that permit can then be revoked, right? Which would, if they reapplied, would start that process all over. So what it does is it makes them stay in compliance for, and I'm not necessarily saying in perpetuity, but every 5 years. I don't necessarily know that that's feasible, if you will.
or from what I'm hearing, even if it's necessary, because there's already another way, if there's a problem, just
Right,
to.
with the state's gonna review it.
Right, and
And
if
the
at any
state
time,
revokes their permit, then they're gonna,
If the state
they'll
revokes
be
their,
shut down.
yeah, if they,
then ours is gonna.
then
follow
we're
suit.
notified, and the condition is that if the mine is not there, or if they don't have the permit for the mine, then they automatically lose the high impact permit.
Yeah.
Also, any of the other conditions that weren't met, that we've previously stated. So then, that would, I don't know, that we can ask businesses to come back and every 5 years and say, this is what we're doing, paying that money each and every time, that doesn't seem feasible.
Right, and a
And it's
normal high use,
reporting.
Right.
They don't need to do that.
a normal high use permit within the county doesn't have a time frame. So
Exactly.
we can't ask these guys to do it.
No, I
Yeah,
think there's
yeah,
plenty of
yeah,
conditions that,
Yeah, that we're gonna, it's put inside. One question, if we revoke your high use permit because of violations, can we turn, or can DMS review that and pull their permit too?
Yes.
You have the right or the power, the authority to send that notification to,
To them.
currently that is to Lucas West, who is has this county assigned to him in the Grand Junction office. And I can give you his name, his phone number, his cell phone number, his email, and his
Home address,
ground
all
address.
that.
And
So there's your check and balance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
those are your
That's
checks.
all
I
that's
think
got.
with the state,
And I
they
know
have
I'm being
enough
kind of
agencies.
overboard,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but they,
So they
that
would-
is
they would
part of
go
their,
through that.
that is part of their business.
Okay.
Really, our concern here is the mine is, really, we have no say in the mine. That's
Right.
DRMS. Ours is the ability to ask for a permit for the mine, right? And we're asking for conditions. And if those conditions are not met, then said permit can be pulled at that time, which in case you would lose the mine permit, right?
What it
So
would
if
do
there's
would be
incentive,
trigger an investigation by DRMS, and
Give-
It would be a
assuming
problem.
that the DRMS agreed with you all, then it would be immediate revocation of the financial warranty. They would immediately go out and contract someone to come in, a third party, to come in and
Reclaim.
reclaim.
the money.
Reclaim.
which is incentive
Yeah,
for them to maintain to the standards we're asking them to.
sure.
And we're not punishing them by making them come back every 5 years.
Good point. but-
And there's no one here to enforce. There's plenty of people from the state to enforce.
Exactly. Yep.
And Nathan, you said the DRMS does an annual inspection?
That is their mandate.
Their protocol.
Just to be doing
Yeah,
an
all
annual.
of those things.
So I'm fine with moving forward.
So, yeah, I think at this time, then I will entertain a motion.
Want me to do it?
Go for it,
Okay.
because we'll do the conditions.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve a proposed high-impact special use permit application submitted by Smith's Materials LLC agent Nathan Barton based on the following. The proposed use is in conformity with the code. The proposed use shall not generate any significant adverse impacts on other property in the area, and public utilities and services are available or can be made available to support uses consistent with the proposed zoning, and there are conditions.
So hours of operation being that the 8 to 5, like the original permit was.
For actual mining operations.
That's the mining operations,
We can
right?
still start our equipment.
We can do maintenance and
So-
Allowable
things like that.
at
What's that?
7.
Yeah, which I think
would
is
say
allowable
so.
at 7. I mean, anybody can run a tractor at any time, vehicles, things like that. The starting it, letting them warm up, I know that has to happen, right? So, but the actual mining operation, 8 to 5,
Yes, sir.
right, Monday through Friday, okay?
With the exception, as you requested, that if a special project came on board where you needed to work on that Saturdays, that you would go through the planning director.
Which is a special use permit,
Special use.
which,
A special circumstance.
there's,
Right.
and we're not necessarily saying they can be expedited, right? That answer has to come from council.
Yeah.
Okay? But you have the option for a special use permit at that time, given that most likely you'll still have to come before the planning commission and the commissioners for that specific, use.
I do have one question just on that. There are cases Saturday where trucks are needing to get loaded just with a loader. We're not talking crushing, we're not talking doing anything, but there have been lots of cases where emergencies have happened where you had to load trucks on Saturday, or a washout, like if you get a torrential rainstorm and they need to fix a road. We have had to load trucks on Saturday out of, different various operations, not crushing, not nothing, but an actual loader, loading dump trucks in emergency situations. Is that something that,
See, that's not part of the mining.
That's not
it's
part of the
not
money.
mining whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's not,
just, we've had to do it in the past from bad rains, where roads have, blown out, people can't get to their
Yep.
houses, stuff like that.
We can talk about CDOT running out of sand.
I think you
sanding
need
the
to be,
roads.
I think you need to be reasonable
Yeah.
with it.
No, we would be reasonable, I didn't wanna,
Not every Saturday, just as an emergency is
Yeah,
needed,
yeah.
but then no mining.
no mining
Yeah.
whatsoever.
That's the key. No
I think
mining,
no
yeah.
mining, but I don't see why in an emergency situation that couldn't be,
Just a loader and truck.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I said, there's sand for roads in the
Yep.
wintertime, Yeah, okay, thank you.
So the hours of operation, the decibel, the decibel reading that you're maintaining that tree barrier like we talked about, you know, so that's your upper limit there. And that if there are concerns or that you regularly monitor that so that if there are concerns, you have proof yourself that you're doing what's supposed to be done, right? If it's not, then you take action to mitigate that.
Okay.
And then,
I think maintain the valid TRMS. Is that the right
You'll
action?
still need to address, if they do a land swap with the Forest
Yeah,
Service.
any change of the 19.1 acres, then that has to come back to us.
not in the change of the
No.
19 point acres,
Not that.
correct?
Not the,
The,
not
That-
the 19.2, but
Because they can,
That's still changing it.
Right,
It's
but
moving
that-
the location.
yeah, but that doesn't come back to us, that goes through DMRS.
Okay.
Right? Okay, that's the approval through that process, which we don't have any.
Well, again, it's the mine, yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
it's the mining.
The addition of the high impact permit to the potential land swap would be considered just like anything else on a case-by-case basis.
That would be an amendment to the high impact.
That would be an amendment.
Because it's all new property that we don't even know what it is yet.
But
Yeah.
that's not a guarantee either,
Yeah.
right? That's
Again,
just,
not
that's
asking for
consideration at
guarantee,
that
just
time.
wanting to know if there's, from your point of view and from the county commissioner's point of view, there's anything a showstopper, because it's going to be a painful and expensive and long drawn-out process.
And as long as there's not plans to mine on that section, which there are trees there, and you've just said you didn't want to do that, right? I don't know why that wouldn't be considered, but that's not a for sure thing, right? To be included in a high impact permit. Okay,
I do have one other question, on truck traffic.
Yeah, I would add a condition that the CDOT
Because there's,
permit be
you stated in here CDOT had their limits,
maintained.
but then you were, looks like you're asking to exceed those limits? CDOT allows 8 left turning trucks per peak hour, 16 right turning trucks. But you're saying you're not gonna exceed 25 left turning trucks per hour and 50 right turning trucks?
No, sir, those are, the CDOT limit that I listed up there is on trucks.
Mhm.
Normally assumed to be multi-unit trucks, i.e.
dump trucks.
dump trucks
Belly-
with
belly
pumps
dumps.
and
Right.
semis. The maximum is all vehicles, even four-wheel, even two-wheel vehicles, because CDOT does not recognize motorcycles. To them, a two-wheeler motorcycle or a three-wheeler motorcycle is still a four-wheel, and that's why that difference is, because that peak hour for other vehicles, i.e. people commuting,
Oh,
coming in, or the proverbial, showing up in your little SUV with your quarter-ton trailer on the back of it type of thing.
okay.
vehicular volumes include trucks, but trucks
Are just part of the,
are part of it, they're not,
yeah,
so it's a
and now we're getting
total-
into traffic impact studies and,
right, so
Oh,
it's a
yeah,
total
I-
of
They do on that.
25
I mean,
and
that's,
50.
that's all part of CDOT's access
Right.
permit. I just forgot to get that clarification before,
Okay.
because
And
Well, that was
then,
gonna be one of my conditions, that the CDOT permit.
follow
be-
CDOT's
be-
access
be-
permit.
Their recommendations permit be maintained, yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of the condition.
a reasonable.
That's the only thing I had different than yours.
so, yeah, I think it's the limitation of the designated land, the open land that you guys talked about mining, that's the limit on it. The hours of operation as stated, the decibel readings as stated, and then obviously you have to maintain all of the other regulations that are out there,
Yeah.
right?
And I don't know if it will simplify to just say we must remain in compliance with all applicable state and federal permits.
I think
That way
it
covers it all and
Right.
Mm, it's all
gives less typing
inclusive.
for Don
And I think it should be noted that applicants were informed that if at any point they consistently did not meet those thresholds or the conditions, that permit would potentially be revoked at that time.
Well, that goes without saying.
Okay. I
That's
just
part
wanted
of
to
the
make sure.
land use
Yeah.
code. If
Yeah,
they'll hear from me first, and then we'll deal with it. But in this instance, it sounds like we'll hear from DMRS before.
okay. So I think those are the conditions.
Yeah, I'm good with those conditions. You guys are good with that,
Okay.
okay? And I second the motion.
Okay. And then any further discussion? Okay. If not, can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Farian,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Saunders,
Aye.
Commissioner Lynch,
Aye.
Commissioner Neergard.
Aye.
Motion was carried, vote was unanimous. Thank you, guys. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
Sorry for.
listening to all of our questions. Appreciate it.
You didn't happen to bring your sign, did you, Grant?
No, I can get it to you.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Oh, you bet.
Sir.
I don't know if you remember. I do.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. I love that. Can I-
Good. Commissioner Farian,
Here.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Here,
Commissioner Saunders,
Here.
still.
Commissioner Lynch,
Here.
Commissioner Neergard.
Anything additional, Tom?
I don't have anything additional. You guys?
I just wanted to say, I am presenting to the county commissioners on Tuesday for the proposal for the land use code change on the PA. So we'll see how that comes out, but I will be doing that Tuesday.
That's the 14th.
The 14th, yep.
Okay.
That's all I had.
All right. I'll make a
That'll be
motion
at
to adjourn.
9 o'clock
9? Okay,
Tuesday. I don't think we have anything else.
okay. Yeah.
Well, we have some stuff to sign, but
Okay, sounds good.
if it's not at 9, it can be at 9:03.
All right. You made a motion?
I did.
Second.
Anybody else?
All in
Nothing
favor?
new, more indifferent?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Who motioned, who seconded?
Motion, second.
All right. Thanks, gang. Oh, fun.